Drink it in, man.
Deep left side carry on. Picks on the block. At the 5. At the 2. At the 1 to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions.
Drink it in, man.
Get up, Stafford throws. It is end zone. Caught! Oh, baby, what a catch! Kenny Galladay, you're a freak! What a catch! Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Cornbread! I love the Lions! Say it with me! I love the Lions!
Drink it in, man.
Detroit Koolaid, what is going on, everybody? We are back, and this is normally where we talk news and notes. We're coming off a bye week, huge football game for the Detroit Lions, but I'm excited to announce that Erik Schlitt from USA Today Lions Wire has been gracious enough to come on the show and join us and talk some Lions football coming off the bye week, heading into this game against the Packers. We want to get his thoughts on what's happened in the season, all types of other topics, and talk about this game on Monday night under the lights. So, Erik, how are you? Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Oh, mid-season here, getting close to mid-season, so we're busy as can be and rolling along. So thanks for having me on again, and appreciate you reaching out.
Absolutely. We just appreciate making the time. Erik Schlitt, one of the hardest working guys in the business. I mean, always breaking great stories on Lions Wire and always on top of it. So happy to have him today. So again, like when you've been on before, Erik, we don't mess around here on the podcast. We get right into football. What I want to know from you is so we're looking at the current record, 2-1-1. How do you feel about that current record? And then kind of go back to what you thought where the Lions might be just coming off this bye, heading into this big game. How does it jive with what you thought, as well as how do you feel about this record so far? Because a lot of people are pretty kind of encouraged, and there's also been a little bit of disappointment here and there. So kind of a mixed bag, but interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, when I did my preseason predictions, I had them at 2-2 at the break. I had them beating Arizona and San Diego, and then I had them losing to the Eagles and the Chiefs. So they're ahead of the curve on what I thought they were going to do. Obviously, the Arizona game, that would have been, a much better left a much better taste in our mouth if it was a win, of course. But as you can already see in the rankings this week, the Lions, even though they're on a bye, because they didn't lose that game, they now sit in second place instead of tied for third with the Vikings and the Bears. So, I think that tie, it could end up coming back to bite them, but I think it's going to end up being one of those things that kind of it ends up not losing that game could end up being very beneficial down the road. So, I'm glad that the fans are encouraged. I like that. I think playing tough the way that they have, even in that loss against the Chiefs, that's why fans are encouraged. And I like that. I like to hear these positive vibes coming out of the Lions community. And, that first week was a little bit tough to swallow, but since then, the last 3 weeks, they've looked good in each. You clean up a couple of things and all of a sudden you're looking like a really formidable opponent moving forward.
Erik, just real quick, Arizona, they played really well. They obviously stumbled down the stretch. And then the Chiefs, they played really well and just wasn't able to make one more play to get off the field. Do you look at the game as a whole and kind of think, man, those were really well-played football games for the most part? Or do you take it like some where, they just look at it's an L in the column, as well as, the disappointment side more so than, we really played really well for 80% of both those ball games, in my opinion. Just curious your thoughts on that.
For me, it's two very different scenarios, the way I look at it. And while there is a similarity between them playing well for 80% of the game in both those situations, and maybe even a bit more, you could argue. With Arizona, they didn't close it out. And I think they learned a lesson with that. And that helped set them up for the next two games in which they won. So I think they used Arizona as like a lesson. with the Kansas City game, Kansas City is a much better team, obviously, and they're a very good opponent. And a lot of the talk going into the game was they have to play perfect ball in order to beat them. Well, they showed even if they don't play perfect ball, they're still in the hunt with this level of team. So it really came down to the fact that they fumbled twice inside the red zone, and that is what really cost them the game. When it's all said and done, throw out the referee confusion on the calls. You can throw all that out. You can throw out the fourth down play that Mahomes makes at the end. Those things are going to happen. Really, realistically, the Lions lost that game on their 2 red zone turnovers, and that's encouraging that you can make those 2 mistakes and still be within striking distance of beating a team at that level. So you clean those mistakes up. Now all of a sudden, like I said, you're hitting with the big boys then.
Yeah, good stuff. I appreciate your take. I always appreciate your positivity, and I'm right there with you on both of those. So Grifka, I'm pitching the ball to you, man. Go ahead and run with it and hit Erik with your best question.
Okay. Once again, through the first quarter of the season, based on going into the season, what area of the team has exceeded your expectations, and what area you think maybe fallen a little short and needs to improve a little bit for this team to succeed the rest of the year?
I think both answers to those 2 questions come on the defensive side of the ball. I think the offense is starting to do what we saw in training camp, which is we're starting to see that all come to fruition. But both the positive and negative, I think, or from what was one of my most impressed with, the coverage on the back end. I really thought the slot was going to be an issue for the Lions, and Justin Coleman has really made me eat my words on that. We've seen really good coverage from multiple corners, not just your starting 2 or 3. You're seeing now they've gone 4 deep now at this point, and they're playing well. So that, I think, they very much exceeded my expectations from a coverage standpoint. The disappointment is the running game. I mean, this is a team that has the top 5 potential to play run defense. I'm sorry, so I should have said run defense there. This is a team that look at all the talent that they have on that defensive line, and they should be a top 5 run defense team no matter what. Now, statistically, they're 20th, and if you look at like DVOA, which uses opponents in order to rank efficiency, those they rank 12th. Now 12th isn't terrible, and 20 is not even the worst. I mean, they started last year like 32nd, right? So it's not like red flag sirens going off concerning, but it's an area where you thought that they would do well. Now maybe it's because Snacks isn't fully healthy, and he's still coming around from training camp, and it took Flowers a couple of games to get ready. You're still missing Deshaun Hand. Now you're down Mike Daniels. All those factor into that run defense disappointment, but the potential's there for that unit to get better. And if it does, and the secondary continues to play the way it is, this is a very exciting defense to watch.
Yeah, I'm right there with you with the run defense. I read other people's comments, and they're like, "Oh, we eat running backs for dinner," and I'm just like, "Gosh, I thought their run defense could totally improve." So right there with Snacks Harrison losing Daniels hurts, but if we get Deshaun Hand back here, that can only help the team. So Derek, what do you have for Erik now?
Before I ask Erik my question, so you pretty much agree with him, Grifka?
On the defensive line, yep, totally.
All right. Erik, again, you brought up great points. I mean, I think I'm going to have to kick Grifka off the show because I love your takes. And like I said, the way you're breaking this down about the Lions, and you brought up a guy that I wanted to talk about my next question. So Deshaun Hand is a guy that I know you've talked about in the past. I know that's a guy that you've spent some time around, sort of have a feel for this guy. I've seen your reports, the brace is off, the brace is on, he's practicing, it's looking good. He hasn't shown up in a game yet. I'm just really both puzzled, intrigued, all types of things about Deshaun Hand, because he really flashed, in his role last year. I really think he's a key piece to that front, as you kind of mentioned, that isn't playing up to the type of standard that we would like. And I think missing this guy has been a big issue. So I'd just like you to maybe help the fans understand maybe where he's at, or where you think he's at with this injury, as well as maybe when we see him back on the field and what kind of impact he can make.
Yeah, so because he was injured in training camp, it's it's really hard for us to get we never really got a game feel for what he was capable of doing, because he's been injured since before the first preseason game, right? So
Yeah.
I think from a injury standpoint, it's mostly just speculation, right? So he initially had the brace on, and then he took the brace off, and I think when he put the brace on like a week ago or a little over a week ago, I think he was just testing comfort levels, because the brace came right off the next day, and then he was wearing a compression sleeve, and then he tried that, and then he switched out of that. So I think he was looking at different protective gear, and he was trying different things out in practice. I think that's really what that was all about. But from a when will he be able to return to the field aspect, it's really hard to say still, but I can tell you that he has been making steps towards getting back on the field, and it wouldn't surprise me if he was practicing tomorrow. So we'll see. He might still end up on the injury report tomorrow, but if he plays in this game, it would not surprise me at all. If he sat out, I mean, again, it wouldn't be overly surprising, but this has always been kind of my target date after the bye, was when I thought he would be close to returning. But we'll know more in the next 72 hours than I guess we know today. As far as an impact, the stuff that they were doing with him in training camp and in the spring was even more expansive than what we saw from him last year. Last year we saw him at the nose, we saw him at 3 technique, 5 technique, even out at the 7 technique. He expanded that to where he was even standing up and rushing from a standing position, almost similar to like a jack position. They were moving him around to different spots. And for a guy who's 300 pounds that you can, move and shift and put in motion, it's a scary thought. And I think really his return to the lineup would allow that defensive front to really expand beyond even what we've seen, which other than the run defense has been, a pretty good. We've got a pretty good impression of them, but I think they're only going to get better moving forward.
Perfect. Appreciate that. Grifka, back to you.
Just a quick follow-up. Any word on Mike Daniels, what his injury is looking like and how long he may be out for?
No, we'll know more when they practice this week. My guess is that he's going to be out a little bit longer, but again, that's just purely speculative on my part, based on the fact that he was in a boot, he was wearing crutches, he didn't practice at all before the bye. Now, extended time rest, that can do wonders for people, but foot injuries tend to be problematic for big guys. When you're 300 pounds and your game is drenched in explosion, if you have a foot issue, that can definitely zap some of your explosiveness. So I have a feeling it might take him a little bit longer to return, but again, we'll know more in the next 3 days.
Okay, that's good stuff to hear. I mean, at least he's not lost for the season. Let's hope that. So my question now, with the trade deadline coming up here pretty soon, I mean, there's always a lot of talk. It seems like anytime there's a big name out there, you're reading the Lions should trade for this person. Do you think that the Lions will make a move, or is there anybody out there that they should be interested in, maybe thinking to add to this team?
I don't think they will. I mean, of course, I didn't think they would last year, and they ended up getting Snacks, but the Snacks deal was just too good to pass. Yeah. I think you'd have to come across a team that's willing to give up somebody for a bargain basement deal, and Quinn would then be able to jump on that. So I definitely think he's exploring, but I don't think he's going out there saying we need this piece in order to make this team better. I think they might be looking at a receiver. We've seen a lot of rotations through the 4 and 5 spots, starting the year with Chris Lacey and Fulgham, and then now both of them are gone. So I don't think they're quite settled at the receiver spot. I think they'd look to upgrade there possibly through a trade. So I wouldn't rule anything out like out of that realm. As far as defense, though, we keep hearing a lot of these like, oh, the Broncos are going to be willing to trade teams, or Washington's going to be willing to trade these. I don't think Bob Quinn's going to give up any big capital in order to go get a massive impact player. Like I said, he'd have to come across the right deal. And, going after some of the guys, big names that are out there, those guys don't seem to be going for bargain deals right now. They seem to want a lot of draft capital, and I just don't think Bob Quinn's willing to part with that at this point.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I think the same thing, that they probably won't make a trade, but it's always nice to think about, to see how much big name talent they'd be able to get on the team. So, Derek, what do you have now?
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is,
"Thank you for calling. Please listen to your list of 46 possible service options."
which is why when you choose USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable. 24/7 online service for claims, access to roadside assistance, and more. All at the touch of a button. Start getting the service you deserve. Get a quote today. Ability to receive a quote depends on membership eligibility. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
Hi, I'm going to whisper some things to you now about Crunch chocolate bars, because apparently this whispering thing is a thing that makes you feel things. It's saying something crunchy is coming in the candy wrapper language. Imagine your tongue hiking up those crispy, rocky ridges. Now, drum roll, please.
Wow, that's good. Crunchy, munchy chocolate doesn't whisper.
Turn up the fun with Crunch.
Erik, I'm glad you're talking draft capital. Because that's my sweet spot, the draft. So my next question to you is, just kind of was curious on your overall opinion of this draft class, like what you felt about it, the surprises, maybe some disappointments. I obviously had lots of takes on it, but want to hear what you have. And then I know you put out a couple articles already kind of perusing the 2020 draft. I have to say my board is about halfway up right now, kind of figuring out these names and players. So maybe throw one name at the people of an intriguing player that you just might have on your tongue or on your board, or somebody that you've looked at already way early in the process. But curious on your takes for the class the Lions had this last year, and maybe not only just where they're at, but maybe where some of these guys are going, or the patience that some of the fans need to have before we see the fruits of this draft across the board.
So Bob Quinn, he doesn't like giving up first, second, or third round picks. He has definite plans for each of those guys. And we've seen this evolve over his last 4 draft classes. The guy, whoever he takes in round 1, that player is going to expect to come in. That player is going to expect to start, and they're going to expect to play close to 100% of the snaps. That's held true every first round pick he's taken. With the second round picks, they typically like to play them less than half the snaps. They like to give them a role and then see if they can expand that role as it goes. And then in the second half of the year, they like to open that up to where they're almost like a full contributor in the second half. Now, with the third round guys, they like to sit on them a little bit longer. They don't like to really give them like full-time minutes or a heavy increase in minutes to like the last quarter of the season. If they need to put them in early, then they do, but typically that's like their kind of outlook. When you get to day 3 guys, it's always a crapshoot. You're gambling on talent. You're looking at guys who could possibly come in and contribute right away, but you're not counting on it. And so that's why he's more free to gamble with his day 3 picks than he is typically with his first top 100 picks, right? So, and we've seen this. And outside of the Tabor pick, every one of those first 3 round guys are massive contributors in everyone and all of the Quinn's draft classes. And that's a huge deal to be able to, hit these guys, that they're going to come in and they're going to be heavy contributors, or I think almost all of them are starting at this point. Right. So it's, that's his game plan. Now, when you look at where this roster is, you really don't know where the holes are because we're only a quarter of the way into the season. But if you look at like expiring contracts, they have 4 starters on expiring contracts. Wide receiver, because Amendola is on an expiring contract. At guard, Glasgow is on an expiring contract. Defensive tackle, both Mike Daniels and A'Shawn Robinson are on expiring contracts. And then corner, Rashawn Melvin is on an expiring contract. Now, if they're going to target, like if you're looking right now and you're like, hey, I want to scout one position, pick one of those positions to scout, because those are the areas that they're probably going to look to target in the first 3 rounds. So the guy I've been saying that people need to look out for is CeeDee Lamb, the wide receiver out of Oklahoma. He's a speedy guy. He can
real
be a
good.
deep threat. He's very good. I could see them, if they're he could be a guy that could, if they continue on their winning streak and they picking, in the playoff area or just before the playoff area, he could be a guy who maybe jumps up into that range, and he could fill a role where he would be an excellent third wide receiver that could jump in and take over as a number 2 if you decide to move on for Marvin Jones a year later. So receiver makes a lot of sense. There's some other guys that are up there. The key, I think, with this, with what he would be looking at in this draft class is you have a couple of guys that have good size but lack separation. So I think he would be targeting a speedy receiver who can get some separation but can also play deep. Those are the traits I think he would be looking for from a receiver standpoint.
Very good. Just real quick on the follow-up to that, I'm all for draft picks, cheap prospects with big upside. I feel like those draft picks are invaluable. You talked about Quinn's patience and him being able to have these plans for these guys. I mean, I kind of love what the Lions are building, and we feel like we're seeing the fruits of their labor, but I mean, is there a little bit of wiggle room where if a right opportunity comes, you got to pounce on it because this team does seem pretty close? Or do you just stick with the long-term plan and just say, in the long run, keeping picks, keeping the books balanced, all that kind of stuff is going to play out for this team? I mean, do you think just stick with that, or do you think if something comes up to get an impact player that could push this team over the top?
I think Quinn's goal is to do what he's doing. I think his goal is to toe the line, keep the picks, build the team from the depth or build the team from youth and then continue to add to depth. Look, they're at a point right now where they have depth at a lot of key positions where they can lose a starter and still be able to maintain their, offensive philosophy or defensive philosophy. And that's how you win games in December. A lot of the times in the past, we've seen these Lions teams just fizzle out because they just don't have the talent. This is a team that they have depth in a lot of areas where they can lose a starter and still be okay because they're cultivating that depth, and they're doing that with youth. And that comes from being able to add players that fit into your system through the draft.
Very good. And I'm going to pitch it back to Grifka. I know we didn't get player specific, but I feel like Grifka's favorite player, TJ Hawkinson, has been more than adequate, a very good football player in lots of different areas. I like what I've seen from Tavai. My guy, Will Harris, is growing into his role, which has been nice. And I just want to see Bryant. I know he's on IR, but I'm itching to see what he can bring this team. I know he's going to have a real limited role this year, but Austin Bryant's a guy that I'm intrigued by in the long term, but I'd like to start seeing something on the back half of this year to validate kind of that 4th round pick they spent on him. So Grifka, sorry, man, we start talking draft. I could be here for hours. Go ahead, sir.
My question goes back to coaching for this team. I know last year when Matt Patricia came in training camp and camps, we kind of read and heard rumblings that some of the veterans were there. That wasn't how he was changing it. They seemed to be working a little harder than what they were used to. This team now, it's 2nd year, and Matt Stafford said they're just, a year into each other. They understand each other a little better. Did something happen with the team with the guys that are here now? Are they buying into it more? Did Matt Patricia change a little bit? What do you think is, helping this team be successful early on in the season?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all of those things. I think Patricia has loosened up a little bit. I think you can see that in some of his mannerisms in public and on the field. He's still, a very smart coach, but I think he understands what it takes to be a head coach, which is something I think he struggled with last year. He couldn't find, it took him a while to find his groove, and I'm not even sure if he actually ever found it. This year he seems a lot more confident. There's a trust factor with his coaching staff that I think was lacking a little bit last year, but there was also a small contingent of players that didn't buy in. Now, I don't like naming names, but I can tell you a couple of the names I heard about are still in the locker room, which means that maybe they've changed their tune. but I can also tell you that a lot of the names that I heard are not on the roster anymore. So, and that's been a theme with since training camp with the players that are here, is that, yeah, they're buying in. It's a team approach. They care more about the W than they do about personal accolades. And I know can be a lot of just generic talk, but some of my off the record conversations have backed that up, and that those voices of dissent are no longer here. And I think that helps a lot. So you add in some veterans that have a good understanding of Patricia. You have guys that are buying in, guys that are getting familiar with the system, the coaching staff adapting, showing more trust. All these things factor into making a team that's more successful on the field.
Yeah, I think the big part was, like you said, how Matt Patricia was able to adjust, that he wasn't too hard line that made the players like, you better adjust to me and it's my way or the highway. I mean, I'm sure he's the head coach and he still uses some of that power, but it's nice for him to be able to adjust towards, realizing, these were my, maybe some of my weaknesses last year. This is what I need to adjust, put a little more faith in other guys. So I agree with you on that. I think Matt Patricia, some of the things that we talked about last year, clock management, I don't seem to be sitting here watching the game going, call timeout. What are you doing? Like I was last year. Maybe, like you said, he's changed a little bit. The team is buying into it more. That can only, they're putting the team first as opposed, like you said, their own personal stats. So, Derek, what do you have now for Erik?
Grifka, we got to get Erik out of here here in a minute. Do you have any other big questions you want to ask him? Because I only got one more for him, and then I want to have him plug all his stuff, and he's got kids to put to bed and all types of, probably writing 50 articles he's got to write rather than talk to us. So you got anything else exciting for him, or you want me to hit him with this last question?
No, go ahead. I mean, I'm really glad I really got to ask him the Matt Patricia question. I was really looking forward to that one. To give his opinion.
Oh man, like I say, all this time, these questions, your answers have been great. We just thank you for making time and coming on the show. So Erik, I've got one more for you. Me and Grifka, I don't know how this is going to go. I mean, we basically, this has been a nice break because normally we argue on the show. We go back and forth. I've got one opinion on this team. Grifka has a different outlook most weeks. I don't know how we're going to make it in the car, but we are taking a road trip, me and Grifka, to Green Bay, Wisconsin. We are piling in probably Sunday night and driving through the night, getting there Monday morning, doing all types of anything we can do for fun in Green Bay during the day. We'll be in the parking lot. We're going to be at this football game, Monday Night Football, Green Bay Packers versus our Detroit Lions. Lots on the line for the division, lots of stakes. Erik Schlitt, do you have a prediction for this football game that you'd like to lay down on the Detroit Koolaid Cast, sir?
Oh, geez, I haven't thought of a score, but I can tell you that in my preseason predictions, I predicted this as a win. The basic reason that I predicted this was a win was because we've seen when you give Patricia 6 days to plan for a team like the Chiefs, you can create a game plan that others will then mimic to try and beat the Chiefs in ensuing weeks. You saw it last year with the Rams. When you give him 13 days to plan for a team, then we saw last year what happens when they went up against the Miami Dolphins and they basically just mollywopped them, right? So I think you give them that much time, he's got a chance to scheme a good game plan. He's got a chance to implement and find the weaknesses. This is an attacking offense that's very aggressive. And, when you look at the Packers and where they're strong, they'll have some advantages over the Lions, but I think the Lions will have a plan for that. And so I'm not going to back down off my prediction of a win. I still think that they're going to go there and they're going to win. I don't have a score in mind though. I'd have to get back to you on that, but I think this is a winnable game. And I just, there's so many little things that can happen. Like this team is getting healthier. This team can control the ball. One of the reasons that the Packers were able to win last week against Dallas was that they got out to a lead and then they made Dallas one-dimensional. Well, that's what the Lions have done to people every week. They've gotten out to a lead and made the other team one-dimensional. So if the Lions can continue doing what they've been doing and they can keep that versatility, then you take away a lot of the Packers' strengths. And, you know, I think it's a very winnable game for sure. I'm picking them to win. I just don't have the numbers yet.
Oh, perfect. Like I say, we don't need a score, but I love the optimism. It's fun to see that we've come this far where you're expecting a Lion win in Green Bay at this part of the season. On any Sunday, anything can happen. But, man, is there a lot on the line for this game. So me and Griff are going to talk all about it throughout the week. We'll do some podcasts from the road, probably do a podcast from the parking lot there as we're getting ready for this ball game. Absolutely super excited about it. And, just been super excited to have you on, Erik. I know we tried to do this throughout the season here and schedules weren't matching up. So you just making time and talking football with us has been great. So really appreciate it. So anything you want to throw out there, plugs, how people can read your stuff at Lions Wire, go to it. And then, like I said, I know you got to put those kids to bed here. So, let the people know anything you'd like to. And again, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, you can find me on Twitter, right? Erik Schlitt.
Are you at 5,000 now? Are we at 5K for you and growing?
Followers
on Twitter? Yeah,
I'm over 7,000.
There we go, man.
That's pretty good.
Big time.
Yeah, yeah. That's pretty good. I feel I'm pretty happy with that. I'm growing at a nice clip, and I appreciate everyone that follows me. It's very humbling to go from where I started to where I am now. So I love that, people want to hear what I have to say. So it's nice,
put out good stuff, man. And like I say, you're really good to deal with. So,
Yeah. So, they can follow me on Twitter. They can follow, of course, the Lions Wire is how the Bills get paid. So any articles, people click on for that helps us out. We don't get paid by clicks, right? We get paid by volume. So that's why we put out as many articles as we do, trying to get people's attention and keep them informed. And so, clicking is great. I'm not going to beg for clicks because it's just not how we do it. We put out content that we think people want to read. And, we're not going to, look, we're not a site that's going to try and draw you in with the tricky headline, or we're trying to be like all silly with like hot takes. That's not us. We're a bunch of guys that want to put out good quality football. So, and good content as much as we can.
I hear there's a decent fantasy football article too that comes out on Thursday mornings. I don't know. I've told the people may have caught that from time or two, but definitely good stuff going out there. And like I say, just appreciate it. I know we can't get you on too often, but anytime we can, it's great. And like you say, we're still really early in this season, just week 6.
Oh.
So it seems like a long, way so far with all these trials and tribulations through these games, the victories, the last minute losses, but still lots of season to go. So hopefully we can catch up again. And like I say, just keep putting out that great content. I know the fans love it and everybody appreciates it. And like I say, just can't wait to see what unfolds for this Lions season. So, Grifka, you got anything else for the people?
No, man, it's going to be a lot of fun. Always exciting.
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll be back on Friday, and looking forward to talking more Lions, giving you more about our prep to Green Bay, and getting you pumped up for this football game. So take care, everybody. Pour a big glass of that Detroit Koolaid. We'll check you on Friday. We're out.
Pack the bag, start the plane. This game is over. It is over. What a comeback by the Lions.
Drink it in, man.